everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. My name is Mel with Energetic Principles.
And I'm Shawna with Neo Feminine Astrology.
And in this episode, we will be discussing the astrology for the week of August 7th, and what we have titled, When Preparation Meets Opportunity. So the purpose of this podcast is to give inspiration and guidance for this week with real-life examples of what to expect.
The three major aspects that we'll talk about this week are Venus trine Neptune, which we're deeming nourish your dreams. We'll also talk about the Sun sextile Jupiter and trine Saturn, which we're deeming spotlight your talents. And lastly, we'll talk about Mercury stationing retrograde in the sign of Virgo, which is all about getting ready to review the details. So, as always, please remember that some of these transits will influence you more than others based on your personal birth chart and what's happening in your life right now. We encourage you to notice what resonates most, take what you like, and always use your intuition and logic to decide what's best for you.
Yes, because you know you best. Let's kick off this week's episode with a quick rundown of the moon's path through the zodiac and some other minor aspects for you astro geeks out there. So we actually kick off this week with that full moon lunar eclipse in Aquarius, which we talked about in depth in last week's episode number 11. So just a little reminder that that's exact on Monday, August 7th at 11:11 a.m. Pacific time, which is 6:11 p.m. Universal time. And Tuesday, August 8th at 4:11 a.m. Aussie Eastern Time. And that's going to happen at 15 degrees Aquarius. So if you would like to review that segment that we did in the prior episode, just a heads up, that starts at 59 minutes into the program. So after all that excitement, our lunar lady will begin her waning cycle into the dreamy depths of Pisces on Tuesday, which will be Wednesday over in Australia. And then she'll remain there until late Thursday, early Friday, when she's going to move into the ready for action sign of Aries. We'll remain in this fiery emotional realm until Sunday, when our silver goddess enters the stability of grounded Taurus. Also of note, Mercury will be sextiling Venus on Thursday, August 10th at 2:03 a.m. Pacific time, which is 9:03 a.m. Universal Time and 7:03 p.m. Aussie Eastern Time. And that will happen at 11 degrees Virgo and Cancer, which is just days before the retrogrades, which we'll talk about in much more detail in this episode. Shawna, let's kick this episode off. We're going to start off with Venus trine Neptune, and what we are calling Nourish Your Dreams. But before we get into Venus trining Neptune, we are actually going to share something that is along those lines in our own dreams, right, Shawna?
Yes.
Yes. And we're so glad that we have been sharing this podcast with you, and so happy that we're on our 12th episode now, and really hope that everybody is gaining value from the work we've been putting into this weekly. And so that being said, we have set up a crowdfunding campaign so that you, the listener, can help support us on this journey and your journey as well, because we are journeying together. So if you would like to support us with your financial donation, which would, of course, greatly be appreciated. We have a couple different options depending on your financial capabilities. So we have something as low as $1 a month to contribute and as high as $20 a month to contribute. So we encourage that you check out how to become a patron of this podcast. And we'd be very grateful if you were to support us with the value that we are creating here. Right, Shawna?
Yes. It's been so great to make these podcasts, just the process in itself, but then it's also been really fulfilling to hear, the feedback from everyone listening. So, thank you in advance for all the support.
Yes, we are very grateful on all levels. So let's segue into Venus trine Neptune, which we are titling Nourish Your Dreams. And that's going to be exact on Friday, August 11th at 10:18 p.m. Pacific time, which is Saturday, August 12th at 5:18 a.m. Universal Time and 3:18 p.m. Aussie Eastern Time. And that's going to happen at 13 degrees Cancer in Pisces. So Shawna, kick us in with your quote for Venus trine Neptune.
So this quote is from Alice of Alice in Wonderland. She says, "Sometimes I believe in as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast." And I love this quote for Venus trine Neptune because it speaks to the dreamy quality that Neptune brings. And it also speaks to this imaginative kind of open to possibility vibe that Venus brings as well. And when these two are in a trine together, it allows for things to flow very harmoniously so that it feels almost effortless. And that's the vibe of this transit, is that creativity is at a high, and it's an amazing time to, as we've titled it, to nourish your dreams.
Yes, because the trine is considered a harmonious aspect, where the energy is just flowing, and it does provide unlimited potential for growth. And it can be an easier growth sometimes, when it's a transit. Trines in the natal chart, also have that same flow, but sometimes we're not activating those quite the same way. So with the transit, I really think that, Venus, lining up with Neptune, is really, like Shawna said, allowing us to tap into our creative, intuitive, faculties, where our dreams live, how we decide what we want to go after in life and where we line our spiritual intentions up with is kind of in this nebulous realm where we, open up to things, that are bigger of nature. And, like Alice says, like she dreams of so many possible things in one morning. And that's where our dreams come from, is this, Neptunian realm. So I love that these are both water signs, because I think that, especially with Venus being Cancer, getting our feeling self and what we're able to open up to, in combining that with a spiritual aspect is really just going to get us closer to what it is we're dreaming about and what, we actually want to manifest in life, which I find goes very well with the next transit we're talking about. But we will get there in a moment. Yes.
And I think that's what's cool, Mel. And that's why, this episode is called Preparation Meets Opportunity, because, this Venus-Neptune connection, it is something that could be overlooked. It's something that is so easy that it just, when there's a trine like this, it doesn't require any kind of action. It's an opportunity that is served up, so to speak, and you can take from it or you cannot. And I think, that's why we're encouraging everyone to dream and to nourish your dreams and to connect emotionally too. The water signs are all about emotions, because, there may be some kind of opportunity there, and, I wouldn't take it for granted. It might be something that could really benefit you, especially, like you said, Mel, with the Saturn, transit that we have coming up as well.
Yes, that's where, if Venus was trining Neptune on its own and we weren't about to talk about the sun sextiling Jupiter and trining Saturn, I would say, hey, that could be a lazy day to float down a river, essentially, and just have a good old time, but I feel like this is like a little piece of the puzzle that really gets us on board with, what it is that we desire in life. And if you want to look back, cause Sean and I love to talk about cycles, the conjunction of Venus to Neptune happened on January 12th of this year. And then the square happened, not too long ago on July 17th. So if you'd like to look back to those times in your life to see, how that, Venus-Neptune energy was talking to you personally, you might see how this trine is really coming into place, and, flowing in your life, Mm-hmm. So yeah. But there's a lot going on when it happens. We have the moon in Aries that day, and it's actually opposed Jupiter in Libra. So I find that interesting, that we're kind of getting this bird's eye view about how we're trying to grow in life, like getting our emotions wrapped around, all this expansion energy that has essentially been in the air for the last however long. Last week we talked about Jupiter squaring Pluto, and we are just in the fact that Jupiter went direct, back in June, I believe, right? Shawna, is when it went direct. And so we've just been pushing forward this whole time. How can we grow? Especially in this eclipse season. So I find it interesting that moon is in Aries. I think that it's really helping to facilitate our dreams and for us to, it's new beginnings with Aries. So how can we emotionally wrap ourselves around this new inspiration that is coming to us right now?
Yeah, I like that you bring that up, Mel, because I think the moon in Aries can be a great resource for this energy because, if it were, let's say the moon were in Pisces or in Taurus, it very well could be like a lazy day. But with the moon being in Aries the way that it is, it's like there may be an itch to scratch or a motivation to use this energy in a very productive way. And for that reason, especially because the moon is in Aries, I would say the more that we can do to harness our creative energy, our emotional energy in a way that brings some type of immediate satisfaction can be very fulfilling. Because when the moon is in Aries, we want results now. Like there's like minimal patience.
Yes.
So, whatever you do, this week and especially, on the 12th and the 13th, on the weekend, it may be nice to do something that's like a quick and easy kind of creative project or to emotionally connect with someone and just have it be, like maybe you just meet for coffee and it doesn't have to be like a full day kind of thing. Like we're, short and sweet is good when the moon is Aries.
And the moon is going to be actually trining Mars, at the same time. So that's really helping us get on board of, moving past the vision of it all to actual action. And I also find it interesting that our moon is contacting that day. It is speaking and, it's also squaring Venus in Cancer exactly, which is what we're talking about. So there's an element of that moon, that is going to kind of push us in this area. That's going to push that trine, for a little more action, as Shawna was just saying. It's not that lazy, go down the river kind of day. It's how do I harness my dreams and push forward and get beyond my comfort zones and out of the past, because we are talking about Venus in Cancer, which can just cuddle up to what once was, and dream these idealistic fantasies, but never go anywhere with them. So I think this Aries moon is actually a blessing to really push, this opportunity into, a place where, there's fruit from it, So yeah. How do you see that Venus square, that moon Venus square kind of playing into this?
Yeah, well, I like that too. And it just reminds me of the feminine element of these two, of the moon and of Venus. Both these planets have a certain element of femininity and a certain element of being concerned with connection. Although the sign Aries is not necessarily concerned with connection, but the moon itself and Venus, like those are like, I want to connect with people and, there's a need for nourishment. I think like emotional nourishment, even with Aries being involved, like there's a need to get something. And so, these two together, it could be where we're looking for that, where we're looking for some type of emotional satisfaction. And so it could be like, to me, this says it's a great time to look for that. It's a great time to connect with people. It's a great time to connect with people who are an uplifting presence, especially with that Neptune being in there.
Yes.
I would, especially like, there's a tendency to feel more sensitive as well with Venus trine Neptune, and then also with the moon in Aries squaring Venus. So, I would err on the side this weekend of surrounding myself with people who are going to allow for my sensitivity. That's what I would say for that.
Yes, and especially with that moon in Aries opposing Jupiter in Libra,
Yes.
there is going to be a balancing out there. Like, we all can't race ahead. Like what Shawna was just talking about, finding that balance and opening up with others. And because Venus is it is the social planet, essentially. And we are saddling up, eventually Shawna and I are going to be talking about that, Venus squaring Jupiter. So this is all kind of leading up, to, us kind of getting in line with how, our own Venus faculties open up with, other people and where we're growing in life. And I kind of see this as a start to some serious Venus action that's going to be coming up down the road, where we're kind of getting this Venus makeover in a sense. But hopefully, but it for the good always, right? We're just all growing here. So, and then just keep in mind, we also have Mercury, who's now cruising along in Virgo, in its retrograde shadow. That is pretty much in opposition to Neptune as well, and will remain there until it goes retrograde, which we'll talk about later in this episode. So our minds are kind of, looking at that Neptunian function in a way to where we can better discern it and understand it. And that's why I really feel like this aspect is calling upon us to get in touch, as we've named it, nourishing our dreams and understanding where to open up to spiritually in life, so that we're more emotionally connected, especially in meaning, because our minds are now cruising through Virgo, and we want meaning and purpose. We don't want, frilly whatever. Like, we're ready to go after what it is that really brings, as Shawna was saying, nourishment to our lives, and especially emotional nourishment, because we're talking about Cancer here. So what nourishes you? This is the time to go in, listen to that intuition, because it's flowing. And like we were saying earlier, you can choose not to, really do anything with this. But I have a feeling you won't. I have a feeling you're going to honor the things that are coming. That Aries moon's going to push you to emotionally look at it, and push through it, in a way that really propels you into something, new for yourself, and the beginning of a journey more so, than the end of one. So I feel that for this.
Yeah, I agree. I think just the fact that we're within the eclipse period, with the lunar eclipse happening earlier in the week and then the solar eclipse approaching later in the month, my sense is that people are more open to things than they may normally be, that there is like a heightened awareness, so that we can be more open to things like this, where there's a need to connect emotionally and to nourish dreams that have been sitting in the background for quite some time.
Yeah, because, I love that, Shawna, because here we are talking about Venus, which obviously loves to open up to things, especially other people, and Neptune, which is all about, disillusion and no boundaries are in place to begin with. So if anything can open up, it's probably Neptune. But, so both of these two planets working together in that harmonious aspect is really calling upon us to open up to our dreams, and maybe, you know, we're going to be putting boundaries down a little later in the week. So this is the time where we could be a little more open, and get a big picture as to all the things that are spiritually speaking to us right now. And then we can hone in on those details. So yeah, I mean, and Shawna, I think the tarot cards really play into this rather well for this aspect. And I drew the, Nine of Cups as the focus and the Mother of Pentacles as the grounding. And I like to see that as, you know, really just we're bringing what we desire down to earth. You know, because the 9 asks of you, a lot of people think of the 9 of Cups as a wish card and like your wish is granted. And that's absolutely true. That can happen. But for me, you know, that 9 being more in the hermit land, I would ask of myself now, you know, what is it that I truly want? What do I want? What do I desire? You know, what speaks to me? And then with that Mother of Pentacles, how can I get it? You know? So, Shawna, how do you see these two cards playing together?
Yeah, well, I'm really struck by this element of dreams, wants, desires being fulfilled. And the other side of this, the 9 of Cups is, like wanting so much and kind of getting lost in the illusion of, like not being satisfied with something or wanting more, and kind of like getting lost in that, that whirlpool of desire. And so, you know, but that being said, it is a trine aspect. And so I would err on the side of optimism, but at the same time, I would be really wary of like I think it comes down to like, what is it that I want, and where is the boundary line for that? Because Neptune in Pisces has like no boundaries.
No boundaries.
They're like, what are those?
What?
What is that? And then Venus in Cancer is not super boundaried either.
No.
This is another reason why I think the moon in Aries is going to be a benefit to us on these days, because Aries is better at creating boundaries. And so, so yeah, it just makes me wonder, like, what is it that we want? And like, where is that desire really coming from? Is it coming from a place that will provide true satisfaction? And then with the Queen of Pentacles, like this says to me that, when we are practical and when there is this more, like down to earth and realistic view on life, then we can really be satisfied. Then that hunger can be satisfied.
Yes, because to make any dream a reality, you know, to make it a reality, it has to be patience, you know, patience to wait and work on your dreams. You know, is your dreams practical? Are they obtainable? You know, and I think that is really that Mercury and Virgo speaking in opposition to this Neptune, that's really challenging us, you know, because Virgos, their strength is discernment and really, you know, how can I'm living a life of purpose and meaning, but it has to also be practical, in some way. And so that's why, you know, cause we're in Leo season, you know, what better card to really get in touch with what it is, you desire and want from life. So that still is in the forefront of all our minds right now. And, you know, it's something that you have to determine on your own. Like no one can really tell you what it is that you want. So I feel that this is a time where we can really get on board with what it is we want, help discern that a little bit, and then assess whether it's truly practical, you know? And, if we can, if what we're thinking and what we're dreaming, and you can't let practicality get you down either, because that's the thing. It's like people can make big dreams a reality. So it's like finding your balance, and that's why I love this Mercury opposition to Neptune, because it's really finding your balance about your dreams and their own practicality, but also learning when you're too practical and you can't make big things happen because you're living in this more narrow viewpoint. And then with Jupiter and Libra, it really wants us to expand and be more decisive in our lives and to go forward. So, I really think there's a lot of good fortune in these cards together. And chances are, if you've already been analyzing your dreams and you've been working to them and patient and practical and what you got going on makes a lot of sense and it's aligned with your spiritual nature, that's when the wish card can come in and maybe you're going to see something that you have been wishing for granted. And, because Pentacles, Mother of Pentacles, it's supreme, like a manifester in a way as far as the earthly realm is concerned. So you might see something, tangible from your, from what you've been working towards, and desiring and where your heart's been placed. So, yes.
Yeah, I love that. And it reminds me of what we were talking about before we jumped on the recording, Mel, about trusting one's intuition and how, we'll get these little subtle pulls of either excitement or concern or, just a gut feeling. And I would say that this transit is encouragement to trust those feelings. And that those are like little nudgings. And the more that we trust that, the more that we are led towards manifesting of the dream.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, that being said, let's, we have some questions to take away for this Venus in Cancer trining Neptune, in Pisces. And so the questions I would ask myself is, I would say, what is it that I truly want in my life? Where is Spirit speaking to me? Do I need to open up? I would ask, when I close my eyes and open my mind, what visions come to me? Can I honor that intuitive information? And then lastly, I would say, do my dreams need nourishment? Which of these are worth the work and which are better left a fantasy?
Love that.
So, all right. Ooh, I just got the chills on that one. The last one. All right. Spirit speaking. All right. So moving on. So we're going to take this Venus, Neptune, dream energy in that kind of ethereal realm and we're going to put it in real life. And that is the sun sextiling Jupiter in Libra and then trining Saturn in Sagittarius. And so this is a 2-part transit that we are titling Spotlight Your Talents. And just for some specifics regarding these transits, the sun in Leo is going to sextile Jupiter in Libra on Thursday, August 10th at 2:24 p.m. Pacific time, which is 9:24 p.m. Universal time. And I don't know if I said Tuesday or Thursday. It's supposed to be Thursday if I did. And then Friday, August 11th, 7:24 a.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that Sun-Jupiter connection is going to happen at 18 degrees Leo and Libra. And then Saturn is going to trine the Sun from Sagittarius, and that will be on Sunday, August 13th at 2:06 p.m. Pacific time, 9:06 p.m. Universal time, and then Monday, August 14th at 7:06 a.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that's going to happen at 21 degrees Leo and Sagittarius in 2 fire signs. So, all right, that was a mouthful, but that's a lot of transit. We got a lot of transit going on. So, all right, Shawna, kick us in with your quote for these sun contacts that we're going to be having.
So this quote is by the American businesswoman Estee Lauder. She says, "I never dreamed about success. I worked for it." And so this quote is short and sweet for this big bite of transit, because this transit, it's really about seizing opportunities. The sun is a spotlight of our awareness, of our attention, and right now this is in the sign of Leo, which is about spotlighting our talents. And when the sun, which is showing a spotlight on our talents and embracing what we love, when it comes into contact with Jupiter, it expands that, it brings opportunities. And when it contacts Saturn, it actually allows for us to get a lot of rewards when we work for something. The beauty of this transit is that it's a very harmonious aspect with Saturn. It's a trine. And so this is especially the case if there's something that we've been working on for a long period of time, and we're continuing to pour so much creative and devoted energy into a project or into a certain situation. There's a certain element of those efforts being rewarded by Saturn. So yeah, I'm super stoked about this transit.
Yes, me too, because that's right with Saturn. Saturn, you have to work for it, but when you work for it, those rewards come. And it's something of concrete, something you can really, you touch, like Saturn is of this world. And this is where we can really build, as Shawna was saying with our, having that harmonious aspect to Jupiter, and the sun is really speaking to those Jupiter ideas and ideals that we've been going through for the last, couple weeks. Jupiter has been coming up, especially with that square to Pluto, and it's not over yet because we're going to be talking about a T-square with Venus soon enough. But this is kind of a stepping stone, I would think, in our Jupiter journey over the last couple months, and especially with Saturn there to really cement it into place. Because when something touches Saturn, that is solid, that is tangible, that has boundaries around it, that has discipline, that has, something that we can really, what we've been working for is now concrete. And something that's very tangible, very different from that Venus trine Neptune energy where it's all in your head. And then, you've got these dreams and intuitions. And this is the type of aspect that you can take all that, Neptunian juice and really put it into reality, and expand your own, horizons based on, your hard work and where you feel driven right now. Cause let's face it, a trine and fire signs is gonna bring some type of change, and we're gonna be fired up and inspired and ready to, just really push forward right now. This is a solid push. Especially, in this Leo season, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it reminds me of how much of a foundation Saturn can bring to an area of life.
Yes.
I'm reminded also of how Saturn is in the later degrees of Sagittarius. So it's like we've been working on this area of life for a period of time, for, probably about a year and a half or so. And this, to me, this aspect with the sun meeting Saturn and also meeting Jupiter at the same time, it makes me think of a certain element of relief around this area of life that's been challenging maybe. And where it's all right, finally, I've just been through the ringer on a certain project or a certain area of life. And there can be a certain, the universe throwing you a bone, maybe, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, that makes a lot of sense, Shawna, because let's keep in mind that Saturn is still retrograde. So a lot of the foundation that we probably are building right now, especially in our own, philosophy of life, because here we are talking about Sagittarius, is chances are we're going to get a more, an inner foundation that has more stability around it. Our inner selves will find the discipline needed to do what it is need to do on the outside. Because this is an internalized energy in a sense right now with the planet operating in a retrograde function. So, how can we take that, stabilizing energy to really, put us on the right path, to be faithful in our vision and what it is we're going for, because we've been having these Saturn and Sagittarius questions for so long, and why the world has been up in arms because, the idea of what it is we believe, and how we experience life has been on the forefront for quite some time now. And I think that really ties into, especially with the sun, in a trine, this is wrapping up the cycle. And just to give a little date perspective for you, we had that Sun Saturn conjunction on December 9th of last year, 2016. So you can look back to December 9th, and really see maybe if there's a pattern in this cycle. And this could be, a last opportunity push, especially internally, since we are, rounding that up. And then also of note that Jupiter conjunction happened, Jupiter conjuncted the sun back on September 25th of last year. So these are all, part of the cycle of, where we've been developing during these times in our life. And, an outside foundation is great, but what is more valuable than inner stability, especially on what it is that you believe. And, really like, putting concrete, boundaries around your own wisdom and how you can progress forward, especially with that Jupiter energy right now.
Yeah, I really feel that it's Saturn. It doesn't just bring a sense of stability on the outside. It brings a sense of inner stability, an inner strength. And you know what I've noticed too, even some people that have Saturn moving through their 7th house of partnership, like even though that area of life is more about partnership and the other, it does even create an inner strength and an inner resilience. So that's something just to really, I think, make note of, like in what ways have we become more strong and more resilient, and where have we been like building the foundation of our own house, so to speak.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because this transit's kind of like a 2-part deal, obviously, what we've been talking about. The whole time that Mercury is really still in that opposition with Neptune. And I find it interesting that once that Sun makes the contact to Saturn, Mercury will have gone retrograde at that point. So once again, we're talking about inner processing with these retrogrades. And, sometimes it's about taking like an inner risk of sorts. Cause here we are with Saturn, in Sagittarius, with Sagittarius and fire in general, can kind of like, that's where change is really born because of that ability to, jump into spirit and take a risk of some sort. And of course, there's a paradox with that with Saturn, which is probably the least risking of any planet out there. It's like taking little baby steps here and there. But I think, with all this retrograde action, and this internal processing, I think we are ready to take a risk, a calculated one at that. And those are the best kind, when it's one thing to take a risk and just jump blindly. But if you've done the work and, which we all have been doing so much work. And I want to applaud myself, Shawna, and every one of you out there, because this last, couple months, this whole year has been a little brutal on some levels, but it's all getting to us to where it is that we need to be. In the long run. And if you're not there, don't worry, neither am I. So it's just one step at a time. And I think these are the types of aspects that are going to get us closer to where it is we need to be.
Yeah. And it's really interesting the way that this is set up too, is that the sun will sextile Jupiter first, and then it will trine Saturn the same day that Mercury goes retrograde. So to me, it's kind of like this, all right, do something, take a chance, and then, see what happens and let the practicality of life. Yes. And then wait for it.
Yeah, wait for it.
Yeah. So I would say earlier in the week, especially, on the day when the sun does sextile Jupiter, Thursday and Friday, those are days to, put yourself out there, to send out the proposals, make the phone calls, do all of that. And then over the weekend, chill and, don't stress about it too much. And caveat with that we'll talk about more when we talk about Mercury going retrograde, is that, with all the press that Mercury retrograde gets and with all the press that Saturn gets about, negative results and bad things happening, it feels important to remind everyone that just because Saturn is involved, just because Mercury retrograde is involved, it does not mean that the world stops. It does not mean that, opportunities won't come in. I do think it's better to put ourselves out there earlier in the week, but at the same time, like I would be surprised if we don't still get a little bit of traction later in the week and then the weeks following. It's definitely a supportive transit for that.
Yeah, Shawna, I was just looking at it and thinking, and even though it's not in this episode, essentially we're coming right off of that lunar eclipse. And, that lunar eclipse is all about, as we titled it, release and reset. So I love how there's kind of that element of release that has just happened. And now we can really move forward. It's like we probably let go of something to some extent. And now this Jupiter Saturn, connection is really, kind of stepping us I feel like it's stepping us forward, in the right direction. But as Shawna was saying, Mercury's going to retrograde, Saturn's retrograde right now. We're going to step and then we're going to process, and it's not going to be an immediate thing, but we're making the moves, and taking the opportunity to, move past what it is we just released. Step into this new reality we're creating for ourselves, and then being patient with that so that we can process everything that's happening basically during this Mercury retrograde cycle, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. But I kind of see it's like release, growth, process. That's essentially kind of what I'm seeing here.
Yeah. So. I love that. And I think that, as far as like the processing, to me at least, the processing will never end. Like it's always something that we go back to. And, so I think that's the beauty of astrology, and that's the beauty of the cycle of life in general.
Well, and astrology is all about cycles, and here we are. Circle of life. I don't know if that's how it goes, but, that's essentially what we're talking about here. I think there's a lot of great things in store. And that being said, let's talk about the tarot, because I think the tarot cards are really reinforcing what it is Shawna and I are talking about as well. And that is the Mother of Wands as our focus and the Chariot as our grounding. If there's not go, go, go energy, I don't know what is, because essentially we're talking about the Mother of Wands, who this woman or man, it doesn't have to be one or the other, but it's a feminine energy. And that woman goes after what she wants. She's got a goal in mind. She's got all her passion behind it. And she is focused on what it is, that she's inspired by. And she's trying to get support from others, and others do give her support. And with that Chariot grounding the whole thing, that's just an added like rocket, fuel to go forward. Like we have the discipline, we have the focus right now. Dare I say, we know what it is we want. And it's time to really kind of put that into motion. So Shawna, how do you see these two cards playing together, with these sun aspects?
Well, I'm also struck by the forward movement of these cards. And, there is so much passion and so much exuberance and so much, just forward moving energy. It's definitely a time to trust oneself when these cards come up. And I think that's what this energy is really about, is that even though it's Saturn and even though Mercury retrograde is approaching, it's a time to trust yourself, and it's a time to be proud and to say, hey, like, this is what I want and I'm going to go get it, and to not be bashful about that. The Mother of Wands in the Rider-Waite, she has this really beautiful yellow gown and a sunflower, and there's like this this ominous black cat sitting in front of her. And to this, this visual, it just really reminds me of the solar plexus. It reminds me of Leo energy. And it reminds me of self-confidence. So
yes.
it's a good reminder to be like, yeah, like I deserve to be out in the world. Like, of course I have important things to do and to say, and I bring value. And then, the Chariot is, yeah, like I'm going to go get it and nothing is going to stop me.
Nothing's going to stop this. That's going to stop this cart.
Nope.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true, Shawna, because, you know, the Queen of Wands or Mother of Wands or however of wands you want to talk about her, she's bold and courageous. Like this woman knows what she wants. And that's just the type of energy that's out there. And she's incredibly creative, and inspiring. And so I love that force, especially behind the Chariot. The only thing I would say in this situation, and I don't know if it's so true because we are talking about harmonious aspects, but you never know. Depending on your own planets, there could be a little bit of friction there. And so, you know, the Mother of Wands can, for lack of better words, get a little pissy or a little challenging, you know, and can be a bit of a force to deal with. Like, you know, she's got so much to offer, but at the same time, you know, she can like bulldoze through everybody. And especially with that Chariot, I would just say, you know, like temper yourself to some extent, you know, because we are talking about Saturn and Saturn, especially Saturn and Sagittarius, you know, that kind of, contradiction in itself, in a sense. So I would just be aware of that. You know, this is the kind of energy that can really propel you forward, and give you the discipline needed to go after your goals, but don't, run over everybody in the process. So just be very conscious about, you know, other people that are involved in what it is you're trying to do. And just, you know, get a little balance around that. Cause don't forget, Jupiter is in Libra and Jupiter is looking for the balanced response, especially when it comes to other people and the decisions that we make. So, so now's the time to really stay focused and determined. And we're really more self-confident than ever. And I think that's a testament, to us moving through this Leo season, and getting more than halfway. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. It's, good reminder to honor and respect other people while accomplishing what it is that you want to accomplish. That's definitely a good, Leo season reminder.
Yeah, right. You know, because we are talking about the sextile here. And if you've listened to past episodes, Shawna and I talk about how the sextile is an opportunity, you know, to do things a certain way. And the opportunity in Jupiter is up to you how you want to proceed in your diplomacy. So, so just make sure that you're on board with that. And if you are, then you're just going to gain more and more support from everyone around you. If you're conscious of the people around you and they're inspired by your vision and your determination, then you're not making enemies, you're making allies. And that is what is very crucial to our growth right now with Jupiter in Libra.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good way of getting feedback. Are you creating enemies or are you creating allies for this particular aspect?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's create those allies because we all need them in life, you know. The more people that support us in our own visions and dreams, the better chance they have of being a reality. So, I think that we are trying to, get our sons into this dose of reality. You know, the sun, it's our star. It's what, you know, is really, it's speaking to this whole picture that we're constantly talking about. This is our center focus. And here our center focus is making some powerful aspects that we can really grab a hold of. Like the Chariot, you know, grab those reins, take control. So, yeah. So that being said, we have a couple questions to take away from, the sun, sextile Jupiter and trine Saturn. So I would ask myself, with this extra boost towards expansion, what details need addressing before bulldozing ahead? I would ask, where can I focus my drive to spotlight my talents? And then lastly, I would say, how can I take responsibility for my goals and inspirations? Can I set a plan in place that gets me to where I want to go?
Love that.
Yep, Saturn loves some plans. Let's get that. We're talking about plans and Sagittarius. So how can we plan to expand? That kind of rhymes. So, so let's do that. All right. So the last, but certainly not least, we are going to talk about Mercury, who's going to be stationing retrograde. And what we have titled, Get Ready to Review the Details. Cause as you might know, Mercury is retrograding in Virgo. And that's going to happen exactly on Saturday, August 12th at 6:01 p.m. Pacific time, which is Sunday, August 13th at 1:01 a.m. Universal time, and then 11:01 a.m. Aussie Eastern time. And that's actually going to happen at 11 degrees and 38 minutes Virgo. We will be stationing. So Shawna, kick us in with your quote for this Mercury retrograde.
All right. So this quote is by Maurice Setter. The quote is, "Too many people miss the silver lining because they're expecting the gold." And so this Mercury retrograde is really interesting because it's kind of like the quintessential retrograde of Mercury because it's in the sign of Virgo, and Mercury is ruled by Virgo. Virgo is all about the details. Virgo is about pulling things apart and reviewing them specifically and in a very discerning way, bit by bit, and then putting it all back together. So that's a bit of what we'll be doing while Mercury is retrograde for these few weeks. The interesting part is that Mercury stations retrograde, like I think you mentioned, Mel, earlier, is it will station very close to an opposition with Neptune. So Mercury is at 11 degrees, Neptune is at 13 degrees. So it's going to come in like just a few degrees away, and then it's going to move back away from Neptune and then come back forward again. So there may be a certain element of like breaking down or reviewing a dream or something that's an illusion or something that's been eluding us. And so it's a good time to really get into that Virgo material, that Virgo mindset of being practical and being very discerning about what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah, right. I mean, if there's any planet that can get something out of Neptune, especially in that opposition, is a Mercury. You know, because I mean, in modern rulerships, you know, essentially both planets are in their dignity. You know, we're talking about two strong, two strong essences together. And then especially with that retrograde function, I really think this is an excellent, if there, like Shawna was saying, if there's any time Mercury to go retrograde to really be beneficial, I would say it's in the sign of Virgo, you know, because obviously, you know, Mercury, rules both Gemini and Virgo, but I think Mercury in, Virgo, especially in a retrograde, I think is really going to lend us a little more, I want to say value in the end. It might not be the right word, but I think so, you know, especially, you know, cause Virgo is so focused on, what has meaning and purpose in life. You know, it doesn't want to just mindlessly do. It wants to work towards something that is of meaning. So having our, you know, cause here we are, we're talking about, Mercury, which, you know, just to reiterate, Mercury is about our intelligence, our communication, you know, how we express ourselves through things such as writing, you know, speaking and talking and, you know, all these, you know, expressive faculties are, you know, come out through this Mercury function. You know, so these are the types of things, you know, when the planet goes retrograde, we are redoing all these things, you know, reviewing, reassessing, rethinking, you know, rewriting what it is we've been, you know, going, you know, all that stuff. We rewrite our story in a sense. Just to reiterate, so you know this period that we're talking about, like I said before, the retrograde period is going to station, Mercury stations on August 12th, but it will retrograde back into the sign of Leo, until September 5th. And I find it very interesting that when it retrogrades and stations back to go direct on September 5th, it's going to be at our solar eclipse point, which will have already happened at that time. So to me, I find it very interesting because, like if you know anything about Mercury, you know that it doesn't stray too far from the sun, right? It can only be 28 degrees one way or the other from the sun. So, that's why our minds get infused with our ego in a sense because they're so close to each other all the time, the Mercury can't get any farther and the sun can't escape it. So, I think this is a perfect time, to see where we might have pitfalls in our own perceptions, especially around our ego, especially with that solar eclipse hitting there because, we're all redefining what it is, what our own ego selves are saying during this Leo season. And so I feel with this process of going back and discerning all that Virgo discernment, and then we are able to move into that analytical energy into this more passionate heart's desire, ego-based energy. I'm hoping that we will have gained some humility in the whole, cause Virgo, really gets us in touch with where we need to be humble. And especially within our minds, some of us have, act humbly outside of ourselves, but have superiority complexes in our mind. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's a lot of, value that can come out of, kind of reassessing how the ego and the mind work together so that we can, get our mind all fresh and on board for all these changes that we're making, and especially with this eclipse season. So I know that was a mouthful, but Shawna, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, so I do also find it really fascinating that Mercury will retrograde all the way to the point of the eclipse and then move back. And I think that's significant because this solar eclipse, it's not just a solar eclipse, it's a total solar eclipse. And it is a reset. It is a reset of the ego, a reset of the sun. And to me, this feels like a time where there could be a lot of feelings of confusion or feelings of anxiety even. I think that the beauty of Mercury in Virgo, and Neptune in Pisces is that there is this element of healing can happen. There is this element of Virgo being very practical and humble. Also Neptune and Pisces can have that as well. But it can bring a more somber kind of attitude. It can bring, a sense of worry. Some people can also experience a sense of, sadness or, like melancholy, from Mercury and Neptune being in contact like this. And I think the solar eclipse, that it's approaching just amplifies that because things do feel uncertain when there's an eclipse happening. It is a reset and it is a change. And so I would encourage our listeners to use whatever grounding practices they have to maintain a sense of faith and a sense of connection to their spiritual self. 'Cause that's the flip side of this is like there's something that is shifting with the ego, the identity, and the mind. The ego identity is the eclipse, and then the mind is Mercury. So there's like something that's shifting. There's something that's being changed. And if we can stay connected to our heart, if we can stay connected to a sense of faith, then that is stabilizing through this process of change.
Yes, it's that absolutely. Cause the whole Mercury function, like Mercury's so interesting because it really only has like two functions, which is essentially observation and then the transfer of information. And that's all it really needs to do. So keep that in mind that whenever all these other factors and considerations start to come into your mind's picture, remember that the mind essentially is there to observe and then transfer the information. And so that's what we're going to be doing in Virgo right now. Like, how can we observe, you know? And, you know, Mercury goes retrograde more often than any other planet. You know, it happens about 3 to 4 times a year, depending on how it's set up. So, basically, we're just going over the last 3 months of, what has happened to us, you know? And I think that's been since, I want to say June. Is that the last, or late, May of last year, or this year?
When did it happen? May. It was late April to early May.
Okay. So that's the last time
April 9th to May 3rd was the last time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think I think it's safe to say that we all can testify that so much has happened since that last retrograde, right? You know? Yeah. So much has happened in all of our lives. And this is the first opportunity that we're going to have, to really review and process and observe, you know, all the things, that we have gone through. And then, you know, especially with eclipse season and what Shawna was talking about earlier, I feel like, you know, especially since Mercury will be retrograde during the eclipses, I feel when it goes direct, and then especially when it gets to its, shadow, out of its shadow to 12 degrees Virgo again, which will be September 19th. I think we're going to be ready to go at that point, you know, Mercury's almost this last peg in the puzzle. And unless your mind is fully, on board with all the changes that are happening, we can't fully, you know, take those chariot reins, right? You know, we have to, get our minds, in line with what it is that we are now trying to do. And that's why I find it interesting that it retrogrades back into Leo and goes forward there, especially on that eclipse point. Because we're contacting, this new identity, essentially, especially with Uranus being in Aries, for however long, you know, and all the work we did earlier this year building, the new you. You know, this is kind of that last piece, I think, to get that mind on board so we can hit this eclipse season and then move forward. Because Shawna and I were actually talking right before we got on the horn with you guys about, the fact that Mercury is retrograding back to that eclipse point. And she had pointed out, remember, Shawna, you were saying that, you had, read that when Mars hits the eclipse point, that we kind of start seeing that change or something significant happens, right?
Yeah, when I've read that when Mars moves over the degree of an eclipse, it acts as a trigger for that eclipse, and that it kind of like releases the pent up energy. And so that'll be really interesting, because the way that I've read it is that the eclipse doesn't really get triggered until that point when Mars moves over it, if it does.
Yeah, and lucky us, we have Mars right on the coattail, so it'll happen rather fast. And of course, we'll talk about this more in detail when we really discuss that solar eclipse. But my point is that Mercury is going to station, and go direct around the same time that Mars is hitting that eclipse point as well. So I think this whole, I just got the chills again. I think that this whole retrograde process that we're going to be going to is really going to, get our minds on board in the best way possible, because we're retrograding in Virgo. And if there's any way that we can shape that ship up, Virgo's going to do it. So I want to say that we should really start to look for these changes, and these, eclipse happenings and this Mercury, really gaining from this Mercury cycle when it goes direct on, around September 5th and the days preceding it and after it, which is also when Mercury is at its, most potent, right, Shawna? Is right during the stationing. A few days after, a few days before, when it's, stationing, retrograde or direct. So yeah, look out for those days and keep them on your calendar, because they are noteworthy, I would say.
Yeah, I love, Mel, I love the way that you make it so simple. With Mercury is really just about two things. It's about observing and then transferring information. And that to me feels like, just even when I think about Mercury retrograde, I'm like, oh, like, okay, it's like very soothing. It reminds me of the creative process. And I've been going back a lot lately, just the past few weeks, to one of my favorite books, The Artist's Way. And the way that she speaks about the creative process is very much this way, like you're talking about, where we observe the world around us, we take things in, we fill our well, that's like the intake, that's the observing, and then we transfer that when we create things. Once we're filled up, then we make something, or we share something, or we give to the world. And the Mercury retrograde period to me feels like a massive filling of the well, so to speak. It's a time when we just really can sit back and observe our own mind, observe the world around us, and just see what we see.
Yeah. Now that's great, Shawna. Maybe we can attribute this retrograde period more to observation, and then the transfer of information more to the direct. Because, you know, when a planet goes retrograde, and let's stay focused on Mercury here, you know, it creates some type of introversion, you know, where we go in, which is perfect for that observation faculty, right? You know, cause we're more introverted. And it's interesting because people who have Mercury retrograde natally, it's kind of a flip. And not just for people that have it natally, but okay. So I love Mercury retrograde because the people who are normally talkers kind of shut up a little bit. And then the people that are a little quiet, all of a sudden you're like, can you just shut up? Like, what has gotten into you?
I've noticed that. Isn't that so fascinating? It's kind of funny.
It's funny how that works. And so all of a sudden your silent husband has everything to say for 3 weeks, you know, and it's interesting. But it's a great way to really think about this all, because, okay, so if it's a role reversal and, you know, the talkers are quiet, now the talkers can listen, right? And really take that in. And the people who maybe don't express themselves as much, who have probably been taking it in the whole time, can finally say something. So, you know, just know that there could be some of that going on if you're just wondering, wait, you're like, this is odd. That tends to happen during Mercury retrograde. You know, and once again, like we're saying, it's just an internal process, and it's time to, anything Mercury related. And so we're going to rethink about how we're thinking. We're gonna, you know, review how we communicate, in life. We're gonna review our own, ways of reasoning. Especially with, as Shawna had pointed out earlier, with this Neptune opposition. You know, Neptune and reason aren't, you know, buddies necessarily. So here we are, like, maybe having to, you know, rewrap our mind around our own way of deduction and in our thinking faculties, and whether or not that's supporting more of a logic, you know, analytical reason, or whether we're a little fantasy based and we have to, you know, get off that cloud maybe and come down to earth, where Virgo lives. So, yeah.
Definitely.
But, yeah. So, all right. Well, you know, we got a lot in store for this, retrograde period. And I think that the tarot cards, add an interesting twist to it as well. And so the tarot cards for this Mercury retrograde, I drew the Fool as the focus, and then the Son of Pentacles as the grounding. And to me, that kind of talks about, you know, learning to trust the process in a sense, and gaining more, trust around certain, ways that or what it is that we're trying to do. You know, cause here we are talking about this whole episode of, you know, manifesting things and getting that preparation for our own opportunity. So obviously there's a process going on that we're all involved in. And I think this retrograde period is really getting our minds on board if we trust what it is we're going after, in a sense, and can really get on board with that to take a risk. Cause we're all in new beginnings right now, and how we live our daily work and our habits, you know, that kind of Virgo realm. If that isn't supporting us, in our new journey, then we have to maybe rework that a little. So, Shawna, how do you see the Fool and the Sun or Knight of Pentacles playing into this Mercury retrograde?
Yeah, I'm struck by this sense of playfulness from these cards that is like super sweet and encouraging to me, especially for a Mercury retrograde period where I kind of like to like shut everything down from a Mercury retrograde because all of the articles that I see, all the things that people are saying, there's such a heaviness to the expectation of this transit. And I don't think that has to be true. And these cards are really encouraging that it doesn't have to be true, that there can be like some spontaneity, there can be some playfulness, there can be a sense of creative new beginnings, especially with the Sun or the Page of or the Knight of Pentacles. And yeah, it's like, hey, like life doesn't have to be so serious. We can have fun and we can be curious, and that's really where creativity comes from. Is it comes from this place of curiosity. And Mercury and Virgo, there can be this way where we're curious about the way that things work, and we're curious about why something hasn't worked. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. If something isn't working or you're getting blocked, maybe there's a way that you can be curious about why, and that can lead you in a different direction that you never would have imagined.
Absolutely. That Fool is about as curious as it gets. Just moves forward and steps go. It gets forward, Yeah. What am I trying to say? You know what I'm trying to say.
I know what you're saying.
So that being said, whatever that was, I love how you point that out and why it doesn't have to be so serious. And maybe where the Fool can help us out in this whole cycle is, okay, so here we have the Knight or Son of Pentacles, which is strong suit is actually, dedication and habit. So maybe the Fool is asking us to, to not be so stubborn, because that's another thing with the Son of Pentacles is it stubbornly plods itself forward on a course. And the Fool could be asking us, to step away, and start fresh, especially with our own, day-to-day, stability or comfort or the things that we're dedicated towards, because if you're dedicated towards habits that are not really nourishing your path and all the things that we've been talking about, this episode particularly, then the Fool is the perfect thing that you need to break yourself out of these patterns that are kind of rigid, and won't let you, try new things in life. Cause if you're stuck to this routine, and if you do it any different, oh my God, what's going to happen? But the Fool is here to give us that fresh start, and to release us from the past and, take a risk towards the future. And I find it interesting too, on the flip side of that with the Fool involved, cause once again, here we are talking about that whole, Mercury opposite, Neptune, which it almost makes it there. It doesn't make an exact opposition. It's almost there, but it's not there yet. So it brings these considerations in mind for us to process during this whole, retrograde. And then when we hit that point again, we'll finally actually have the exact opposition and then move on from these issues. But all that being said, the Fool has a sense of naivety to it, and there's an inexperienced, nature, and can be a bit idealistic in some respect. And here we are once again talking about Neptune and Pisces functions. So there's really that tempering of how we can take that, freshness beginning of the Fool, but temper that naivety. And the inexperience and idealism that we might find, with this card. So it's a delicate balance, if you're stuck in these old routines and you need to break out, the Fool is saying take a risk and step forward. If you're fooling out all over the place and you're being a little idealistic about everything, and a little naive to what is going on, now's the time to get a little more practical with that Son of Pentacles, and to get more grounded, and stop leaping in every single direction and stay focused on, and dedicated to a particular path. So how that works for you, you'll have to decipher yourself, but I see this kind of being twofold in a sense.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Between being open and then being reckless.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So, how do you balance that out? And of course it'll be different for everybody. But yeah. So, that being said, just a couple takeaway questions for Mercury retrograde in Virgo. And some questions I would ask myself would be, which details in my life have I been focusing on too much? And which need more attention? I would ask, where does my mind need to review its processes? What is helping and what is hindering? What needs to be cut? And then lastly, I would ask, with all that has come to light in the past 3 months, how can I reprocess that information to set me on track for the future?
Nice.
So, all right. Well, Shawna, what have we learned? So much. We've learned with Venus trining Neptune, you gotta nourish your dreams. And then with that Sun sextiling Jupiter and Libra and trining Saturn and Sagittarius, it's really time to spotlight your talents. And then last but not least, Mercury stationing retrograde in Virgo is saying, get ready to review the details. So Shawna, now I know you have some excellent action item to take away for this episode. Will you share that with us, please?
Yes. So, action item for this week is super simple. I want us to write down 3 actions that we'll take this week to move towards the preparation for our dreams. And so ideally, do that right now or right when you're done listening to us. But that is really intended to solidify the theme of this week, which is when preparation meets opportunity. So write down 3 actions that you'll take this week to move toward the preparation for your dreams. And then, feel free to share with us to hold yourself accountable. Take a picture and post it on Instagram, tag us. It can either be, writing something down, or it can even be actually doing one of these things. We always love connecting with you guys and hearing how you're implementing the guidance from the week. Yes. And you can find me on Instagram under Neo Feminine Astrology, and then Mel is at Energetic Principles.
Yes. So tag us. We want to see what you're doing. And,
even,
if you're doing, the action item, or you're just listening to the podcast, or you just want to take a selfie and say, hey, we want to see that. So, so get out there and, share with us, because everyone will be happy. So that being said, as Shawna just said, where you can find us on Instagram, but you can also, cause we do these podcasts, basically to give you a generalization of, what's going on this week. But if you need some specialized, attention, that's what we're here for. So if you need to find me, you can find me at energeticprinciples.com, and on Facebook and Instagram at Energetic Principles. And once again, I'm on YouTube as Energetic Principles, and I do have this month's, horoscopes up, which I do talk about Mercury retrograde for each sign, and some of the other aspects we've been talking about recently, if you would like to check that out. So Shawna, where can they find you?
You can find me on my website under neofeminine.com. And then, of course, Instagram is also a great place to find me under Neo Feminine Astrology.
Yes, and it's always updated and always fresh stuff to look at from the both of us. So check it out. Any last words for this episode, Shawna?
Just sending lots of love, and would love to encourage you to leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes if you enjoy listening to us every week. Make sure you're subscribed as well to get future episodes right away when they're uploaded on every Sunday.
Yes. Yes. And just to reiterate about the whole crowdfunding campaign, I just want to add a little more detail. And if you are interested in supporting us that way, you can go to feminineprinciplepodcast.podbean.com. And on that page at the top, it'll say become a patron. And you can click to see what options we have there. So yes, we greatly appreciate your support on all levels, and we're here to support you. So let's continue down this journey together. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, may the stars be with you.
Namaste.